Hello and welcome to Paper Plays Julie K.
Welcome everyone, and thank you so much for stopping by to check out my latest video. And today I'm here with a project share for some crazy quilt hearts that I created from a quilt that my great-grandmother created for my uncle. And a couple of years ago, my mom and dad were helping my uncle clean out his place and organize a little bit. And they came across a quilt that he had that my great-grandmother made for him when he was younger, and it was falling apart, and he decided that it was time to let it go. And my dad saw possibilities for it, and so he salvaged it and he gave it to me, asking if I had any ideas. My dad briefly thought about maybe cutting up the panels and putting them into like picture frames. And I said I would think about it for a while, and then so I've held on to the quilt for 2 years, and I decided the other day that I was going to do something with it, and I decided it'd be fun to make little hearts out of what was left of the quilt and make them for all of our family members on that side of the family that are still left. And so you can see here are some of the hearts. I still have a few more hearts that I possibly could cut up. I have a couple little panels left of the quilt, but those ones are the ones that were pretty damaged, so I decided just to hold on to those for a bit longer and then just kind of see how all these are received with my family, and if I need to make a couple more, I will. And I'm going to insert a photo of what it looked like before I started. And again, the backing of the quilt was damaged. There was no backing, and so I had to put on another backing, and for ease of convenience, I did decide to use black felt. I just chose a color. As you can see, it's a crazy quilt. All the material is wild and crazy, and the story behind it is that my great-grandmother used to receive like material from old pieces of clothing left over from people, and people would just bring her like bags and bags of stuff. And so she loved to make crazy quilts, and a lot of members in my family, a lot of my aunts and uncles, and some of their cousins received crazy quilts that my great-grandmother made. I did know my great-grandmother. I was probably maybe 3 or 4 or 5, somewhere around there, when she passed. And she actually lived in a small house, and she didn't have running water into it up until almost close to the time when she passed. So that just kind of tells you that, you know, she roughed it and lived kind of on the outskirts of town. But anyway, so she created all these quilts for everybody. My mom does have a quilt which she gifted me, so I do have that one. And hers was in better condition than this one. My uncle just happened to really use his quilt over many, many years, and so his had fallen apart, where my mom, when she saw that some of the stitching was coming out on hers, she actually just put it in a safe spot, and she just put it over her hope chest instead of actually using it as a quilt. And so hers is still in pretty good condition, which again she gave me, and I have it over her hope chest in my loft area of our cabin. But I did decide to take my uncle's quilt, and I made it into all these wonderful hearts. To make these hearts, I did take a heart template that I have in my stash. It's just something that I traced from another heart. And so I did use that as my template, and I cut out pieces of the quilt. And what I tried to do when I possibly could is I tried to at least make, as you can see on some of these hearts, like this one doesn't, the stitching has already come out, but there was still some of her visible, my great-grandma's visible stitching right here. And so I tried as best I could when I was cutting out the hearts to at least attempt to have some of the stitching if I could do that. So I did cut out the top of the quilt, and again the back side was missing the protective layer on the back side, and so I did choose to just use black felt. I just felt like it was quick and easy, knowing that I was just going to kind of make them into little ornaments or wall hangings. I also had the idea that possibly if my relatives didn't want to hang them, that they could just cut off the thing and they could put it into like a little frame or something. So there is that possibility. And so I did cut out the quilt pieces, and then I also cut out the the felt. And then I did stitch around them, and you can see some black stitching on my sewing machine just to make sure everything was secured quite well. And then once I did that, and then when I was doing that at the same time, I also added the ribbons, and some of them have different color ribbons on them. It just kind of, I started off with black, and once I ran out of black, then I kind of switched to a couple different other ones. I did also, since some of this material had polka dots on it, I did actually have some ribbon that matched. So those ones I tried to add that ribbons in it. So, and then once I had that done, I went and visited my mom, and we sat and we did the blanket stitch around all of these. And for the blanket stitch, we just kind of chose whatever color randomly we wanted to. But my mom had a ton of this, and I don't know what this type of thread is called. And it's softer than embroidery thread. And it almost reminds me of really lightweight yarn, but I'm not quite sure what it's called or what it's used for. My mom got a big grab bag of it a long time ago at the thrift store. And she uses it once in a while to do blanket stitching around baby blankets that she made, but she had a ton of it. And so we just chose all of her colors, and we just kind of, when we got tired of using a color, then we switched to another color. And I just borrowed these from her just to show you guys what type of threads that we use. Again, I'm not sure what they're called. And so these are all of the hearts, and I'll just kind of go through them pretty fast that I made. And again, they're wild and crazy. My grandma used to receive, or my great grandma used to receive, like I said, material from people, old clothes. A lot of these were old clothes, and I'm guesstimating just looking at the style, and a lot of it was polyester from the 60s and 70s, 1960s, 1970s. A lot of the material came from there. And so again, my grandma just loved to make quilts, and she would make lots of wild and crazy quilts out of all sorts of material. And my mom's looks very similar to, some of these pieces of material I've actually seen on my mom's quilt too. Some of them are different than what my uncle's were. And at the time, my grandma used to make for all of her grandkids were quilts. And so I believe most of them did receive quilts from her. And like I said, just kind of wild and crazy colors. And my plan again with these are to gift them to family members or descendants of my great grandma. And so my mom and I started off with 50. So we do have 50 hearts, and I still have a couple panels that I can cut up if I have to make a few more. And but again, I took the best panels that I could to make these hearts. The other couple panels that are left are falling apart. And there's that one. A couple more. So it's kind of a fun little project. You know, I worked on it. It took me a day to cut out the quilt hearts, and it took me another day to cut out the black felt on the back side, and it took me another couple of afternoons. So that probably would have been another day to sew them all together and add the little hanging mechanism on them. And then it took my mom and I two days to do all the stitching on these. And we just kind of sat and we visited. Her neighbor Joanne came over while we were working on them too, and visited with us. And we, you know, would take breaks to eat meals and you know, go for a walk or whatever. And then we also in the evening watched a couple of shows on TV. So so we had a good time, and it's been a long time since I've done the blanket stitch. So a few of them I was still kind of learning how to do the stitch again because it's been a while. My mom makes the blanket stitch quite a while, or uses it quite a bit. She makes a lot of baby blankets, and she does the blanket stitch around it, and then she crochets using the blanket stitch on her baby blankets. And so there are the last two. And then the only other thing that we are going to do is my dad found some sort of spray, just because, you know, the blanket's been, you know, well used. We are going to spray kind of a spray that's supposed to help with like germs and a musty smell. And then my mom is going to help me. We still have to write up a little paragraph about my great-grandma and, you know, about how she, you know, she collected material and people would give her material for these. So we're going to do that. And then once I've done that, then I'm just going to randomly pick them and hand them out to family members. So, but I was really excited with how they turned out. And they turned out a lot better than what I thought. Again, though, the material's wild and crazy, not necessarily my style, but I did enjoy working on these, and I do love how they turned out, especially once we added the blanket stitch around the outsides of them. That really helped pull the whole heart together. So thank you again, everybody, so much for watching, and you'll have to let me know what you think if you guys have any quilts like this in your stash that you've gotten from past family members, and if they're still in good condition, or if they're not, what you've made out of them. Just kind of curious about that. So thank you again, everybody, so much for watching today, and you'll have to let me know what you think of my little project. And until next time, have a wonderful day and happy crafting.